Welcome back to another episode of the Jesus Cartel. With me, not as always, Mr. Clay Russell. Clay, how are you doing, brother?
Man, I am doing good. It is so great to be back on the Jesus Cartel and be back in my seat where I belong.
Isn't it unusual now having people kind of fill in for one or either of us? It's I don't know, like it's still consistent, but it feels a little off.
Right, because consistency is a big part of my life.
Yeah.
Routine is a big part of my life. And, but some things have changed in my schedule. My schedule has gotten tighter. And so last week, not doing the Jesus Cartel for me and Aria doing it was a big help. But it was also gave me a little free time that I wasn't used to for the couple weeks before that. And then this week, knowing that I had this and another commitment yesterday about the same time or Wednesday about the same time, then I had to plan my whole week different. And so my wake time, everything that I've done this week was different than usual just because of two scheduling things that had to be done.
Praise God. Now we got the cameras running, which is going to help things significantly.
There you go.
Yeah. So if you're wondering why there was darkness at the beginning, it's because inconsistency.
There you go. So we're not going to edit it.
Yeah. No, it's going to stay just like this.
Dark.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, we don't edit anything. That's
So
a staple of the show.
Right. So when you do post-production, we don't edit things as far as cutting it out and making it better.
Correct.
But do you think you might put something across the screen that says, what did it used to say when your channel went out, like when we were
Oh,
kids?
is that weird?
Like, yeah, it's weird. Like
for me, it
different
was like a
colors
color,
and stuff like
yeah.
that.
Uh-huh.
And it'd say something like, we'll get your station back momentarily.
Technical
or
difficulties.
Like, yeah.
It'll probably just say Andrew's an idiot. And
we could do something.
yeah.
Because I know people like my mom are going to be like pushing the phone right here trying to figure out why she can't see us.
If you listen to the audio version, you're going to have no trouble whatsoever. It's
yeah,
going to be
but
completely
there's some
normal
people
for you.
that really like to look at
Yeah.
us, and it's kind of like the live stream at church to where people just they can't hear you, so they just put blast all over Facebook, hey, we can't hear you, and the whole time they have their phone on mute.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah.
That happens a lot. That's
But
the
anyhow, I am
age
very
gap.
glad to be back in my seat. Now, I will say this. If I was going to have anybody in this world sit in my chair besides me, Aria Skull had to be the number one choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And man, did she not knock it out of the park? I mean, did a great job.
Yeah, man, I was very pleased with that. It was quite unusual having to do that with her. One, because she's my daughter, but that part's not so unusual. The unusual part was having to be prepared. Like when you speak, you just speak. You share your opinion, and I let you share your opinion, and I don't feel like I have to come behind you and like explain everything that you're saying because you don't know how to explain yourself super well. But she has the depth of explanation of a 7-year-old child. You probably heard a pretty well-versed 7-year-old child, but a 7-year-old child nonetheless. And so, I was listening not just to hear and learn, but also to translate, because she said some things in there that made a lot of sense to me because she's used to talking to me. I'm her typical audience. Right. But I knew that maybe the regular audience wouldn't exactly understand. I think my favorite of which was she said half our family was Christian.
Hey, that was my favorite for sure.
That's hysterical. Yeah. But to her point, she's correct.
Yeah.
Only of the 6 of us, only half of us have actually professed Jesus as Lord. The newborn, the 2-year-old, and the 4-year-old haven't yet. Right. And so I do understand what she was saying. And man, but it was a lot of fun. She did a fantastic job. And,
I'm used to listening or living with literal people that say what they mean and mean what they say. I'm used to living with people that don't understand slogans and jargons and those kind of things. They say what they mean and they mean what they say. And so I knew exactly where she was going with that. First opinion of a lot of people was that she was talking about, people outside the immediate family. But I knew right off the bat she was talking about the fact that she's not going to just throw them in the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
just because they exist.
That's right.
That's
right.
And she's gonna make them earn it because
That's it.
hey, this is what she's learned. This is who she is, and so I really enjoyed that. We can now use a soundbite of only 50% of Andrew School's family is saved.
I'd wear that shirt.
Yeah, we could do that. We could make a shirt. More than half of my family is saved.
Yeah.
Unlike Andrew, we could do that. I also like the fact that she didn't want to go to jail. I thought that was pretty cool, and also the fact that even when she's a grown up, she's not going to have idols. And so I enjoyed all those things.
Yeah, the fact at the end where I asked, and unfortunately, some of our people at Fresh Start, they typically get to listen to the Jesus Cartel. They didn't get to hear the whole thing, and some of them are mad about it. And
I heard that.
and I understand why, because it was the next week. We've got to find some space to make that happen somehow. Hopefully it does. But she said some things towards the end that were super beneficial, one of which being, I ain't no Holy Ghost,
Right.
which is probably my favorite quote of the whole deal. But more than that, when I asked her at the end, I was like, what do you hope that people say about you one day? And she was like, well, I hope they don't say anything about me. And I took that as, I don't want anybody to say anything bad about me. That's not what she meant.
Right, yeah.
That's not what she meant. She said, I hope that they don't have an opinion of me, even that's good.
I took it as she was trying to win the most humble award from her dad.
Right. Right. So when she corrected, like when I was like, oh, not like anything, and she kept going, and I realized, oh, she's not worried about people saying anything negative. Right. She doesn't want them to say anything positive either. She just wants to do what she's supposed to do. Man, that was a really cool moment as a father. And man, she is such a literal kid. It's so funny because like 2 days ago, so she's they won their All-Star tournament. They 15-runned everybody. Actually, they destroyed everyone. And Aria is extremely literal. And so right now she's practicing every day, trying to get ready for the state tournament they're going to go to. And I called my wife and I said, hey, here's probably what Aria needs to do today. If you can like put a 30-minute timer on, get her out in the yard, just tell her to do this. And Courtney, she said something, and I was like, you got to remember Aria is very literal. So like tell her exactly this. And then when we tell her to hit, we tell her to hit it either to third base, so it's the furthest throw, or to the second baseman if there's runners on second, so that we can move the runner to third. And so I was telling Courtney she needs to hit to the third base side and she needs to hit to the first base side. She needs to practice both so she can just work on her footwork and stuff like that. She's in T-ball. And so Courtney goes, all right, Aria, Dad says you need to hit to third and you need to hit to first. And Aria goes, what about second? Like the fact that you said first meant first base, the bag. She could not. Yeah, she would not. And that's exactly what she was going to do. Right. And yesterday at practice, she rolled a ball underhand pretty hard to the coach just because he wasn't looking. But she rolled. I told her to roll it to him. She bowled it, tried to knock him down. And the coach goes, hey, that's how I want you to throw into the bag. What he meant was, that's the speed, like that aggressiveness. So the next time they hit her a ball, she rolled it underhand to the first baseman. And everybody was just kind of like, and I was like, well, hey, I knew that was about to happen. I didn't want to yell.
Called it.
Yeah, I didn't want to yell over the top of everybody and be like, hey, don't say that. She's going to bowl it. But for sure knew that was going to happen. And so, man, I was super proud. We're at a unique time of the year, not just of this year, but of a 4-year cycle. And there's been a lot of different stuff going on. What's been going on lately that has caught your attention?
Well, so before I answer that, I do want to make one more comment about Aria.
Go for it.
So here's what it's done for me. Number one, we love her, and she is exceptional. And so there's so many reasons why that segment was good, mostly because of her, and because the way that she's raised and stuff. I was actually at her first ball game that Friday night, and it went. So Jesus Cartel went out on Thursday. So on Friday, I actually had a conversation with somebody that had already watched it. Actually, a couple of somebodies, and there's. Their opinion was, man, you can just tell that she was raised correctly, and different things like that, which I really feel like we'll catch some slack on. You know, I mean, we've kind of let it be known over the last few weeks that we do have people hating on us from time to time about how perfect our families are, or,
Sure.
Different things like that. And so Aria, slam dunking this at 7 years old. It wasn't like having a 7-year-old here. It was like having a very mature 11 or 12-year-old, or maybe even more here. And so I feel like we'll catch a little heat from that. But one of the things that I've enjoyed the most is I have been able to specifically talk to people that I don't think naturally listen to Jesus Cartel, but they should.
Sure.
Because they're trying to get better in life. And if you're trying to get better in life and you're a Christian, why not listen to Jesus Cartel? And so I've been able to specifically ask them, hey, did you catch Aria's episode of Jesus Cartel? And then, either they have or they hadn't, or they heard about it or they hadn't, or whatever. But it's given us, a new audience. But it's also allowed me to help give us a new audience, because I'm kind of, asking people specifically, hey, did you hear Aria? If you didn't, why? You need to listen to her. This is a big deal. You're trying to raise kids. You're trying to do, things better. Well, here it is. She's got some really good insight here. She's adorable. You love her already. Why haven't you listened to it?
Yeah.
And so I like it. This gave me a little bit, another tool in my toolbox to use to help people better themselves.
Yeah. The major reasons that we wanted to do that are because you and I, we've talked about it for a while of it being a possibility, and we just kind of pushed it back until we felt that the time was appropriate, and I think that was the correct time. But there was a lot of benefits. One was you're going to get a raw look at a 7-year-old kid who has Christian parents, and this is what we were either going to see what one should look like or not, because I didn't let her know what we were going to talk about. She didn't know any of the questions. And I asked questions in a way where she had multiple opportunities to say anything negative that she wanted to say about our home, about me, about the way that I raised her, any of those things. She had multiple opportunities to tear those apart, and she didn't. Not only did she acknowledge some things in our house that we do different than a lot of families in terms of like the way we discipline and stuff like that, she also acknowledged that it'd be nice if she didn't get in trouble, but is glad that we discipline her because discipline is love. And like to be able to understand that at the age that she is, man, I hope that for families that are more lax in their discipline, I really hope that they were able to take a nugget from that and recognize that my child recognizes that as a form of love. And even though she'd like to not get spanked, she'd rather me do that because that's what true love is wanting to help someone not be in bondage to things as opposed to the alternative.
Well, and not only did she understand it, but she was able to articulate it, and that takes a deep understanding. So you know how well somebody understands something when they can articulate it the way that she did, and I really enjoyed that. Another part of it was that you asked her, what are some things that maybe other people's families do different that you wish we did, or there was some kind of opportunity there for her to talk about how she would like things at other people's places better than hers, and she didn't take the bait on that. She didn't see where things needed to be different, and it was probably part of that same conversation.
Yeah.
But I think that's what people don't understand. I had a youth leader go to my oldest daughter one time, I think it was, if I remember correctly, and just say basically same thing. Does it really bother you that your parents are so strict? And my daughter's like, my parents aren't strict.
Yeah.
And she was like, no, your parents are really strict. Does that bother you? And this was like one of her youth leaders. And she's like, no, they don't do anything that doesn't benefit me.
Yeah.
You know, why would I, because she's my literal child too, you know, why would I want my parents to be laxed in some areas that ultimately would hurt me?
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't really understand that line of questioning.
Sure.
And, you know, not from a youth leader
Yeah.
that my tithes was paying. But she didn't understand the question either.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, are you trying to cause some problems here? Because we don't have any problems, you know, and I think that's what it's hard for people to understand.
Yeah.
It's hard for people to understand that just because Aria doesn't have a whole room of toys and she's allowed to have a certain amount of toys, that Aria would feel like she doesn't have enough toys. No, she feels like she has plenty of toys.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so we don't need other people trying to, you know, cause confusion and cast doubt and stuff. You know, I heard a sermon about, you know, don't let other people pull down your ceiling. You know what I mean? Aria has all the toys that she needs. She doesn't need somebody to tell her that she doesn't have enough toys. You know, or, you know, your parents don't do this. How does that make you feel? She doesn't see it that way.
Yeah.
She sees it as, this is how we do things, and this is best for our family.
Yeah, that was her literal response. Was ask her, you know, about the differences between us and the way other people live. She goes,
Right.
I don't see other people's houses.
Right.
I don't know.
That's
I have
not
no
her
idea.
deal.
Yeah, I have no idea what happens in other people's
Right.
houses.
It's not
Yeah.
that she may not visit. It's not, but that's not her mentality.
Yeah.
Her mentality is, this is the way we do things. You know, and as my kids have gotten older and stuff, it never changes. You know, they desire those things.
Yep.
And, you know, yesterday, I'm trying to think if this is appropriate to say, but it will be. So I'm doing group with the first phasers yesterday, and we're in an anger management section, you know, and of the sessions, and it happens to be on the family and how we were raised. And every time I've ever taught this anger management class, it's kind of always the same way. You know, that family session's always the toughest one. People may show the emotions, they may not, but it makes them deal with it. It took 2 days of us, you know, 2 sessions of us going through it. And basically you go back and you look at, you know, it just starts with a baseline. Who raised you? Who was in your home? You know, who was there? You know, did you have a mom and dad living together? Were they married? Was it stepdad, separate homes, siblings, different things like that? And then the next question has to do with how was anger expressed?
Yeah.
You know, in your family and stuff. And so we start discussing it, you know, and specifically, you know, and then the next thing, you know, the next day is, well, what other emotions were, you know, present in your house and different things like that. But yesterday, towards the end of the session, you know, one of the strongest guys in group, you know, just broke down and said, look, man, he said, the greatest issue that I have in life is all of those things that I hated about my dad, I've seen myself become. And, you know, it really got to me, and I referred back to it a couple of times, and then I thought about it last night and stuff. That's the extreme version and reason why we do the things that we do.
Sure.
Because the way you raise your 4 children is going to be who they become.
Yeah.
In most instances.
Yeah.
And so if you raise them the way you're raising them right now, to love the Lord, to have a personal relationship with the Lord, to love other people, to see things the way, you know, God sees it, to do those things, then the likelihood of them maturing in that way is great. You know, because number one, they want it, they desire it, it's good, it's beneficial, and all these kind of things. And so you're teaching them all these things, and they're good, so why wouldn't they want to do it?
Yeah.
But what people don't understand is family development stuff is so strong that even if you hated the way you grew up and was raised and all those kind of things, you still will lean towards becoming that just because that's how you were raised. And in order not to, you had to break some generational curses, and we've done that in our lives, and we understand that can be done. But we also understand that this way, talking about the positive side, the way, Ari's growing up and stuff, it's just so much easier just to stay on that path.
Yeah.
Because this is what we do.
I don't know exactly. I know that it's based in science, but I don't know exactly how accurate it is. But I know that it's at least more accurate than not, that they say that 90% of a way that a person sees the world is developed before they're 8. And so that's what that means is what you're saying is what that is.
Right.
And so up until 8, you're learning what the world is. You're learning the harsh realities or the great wonders of what the world is before you're 8 years old. 90% of it. 10% of that you can shift and alter. But most of it is going to be given to you, and it's very, very hard to overcome. It can be overcome, but you want to talk about tedious work. It is tedious work to not fall into the same cycles of what you were raised in. I mean, that's always kind of what people fall back to. You know?
So when you say that 90% of how you're raised up to the age of 8 determines who you are and the way you see the world, our mindset goes to the negative side. So in order to break out of that, then we got to really do some work.
Yeah.
And we got to, cancel some generational curses, and we got to, have a complete turnaround to be part of that 10%.
Yeah.
But what about if it was on the good side? And we're raised well, and we're raised the way we're supposed to? It would be almost impossible to go the other direction.
Correct.
Because of how well we were raised.
That's correct.
And so we say all the time, where identity is strong, peer pressure is weak.
That's very good.
And where identity is weak, peer pressure is strong. And so we look at it as a 10% chance of coming out. I'm looking at it as a 90% chance of it's whooped. So because I did a really good job of raising my kids between 0 and 8, the next years are easy. They're gravy. And I have seen that in my family. I've seen that the raising took place young, and all those kind of things. I've also seen and been at all the conferences where they talk about childhood trauma and how early it happens. And 0 to 1, or before 0 to 1, childhood trauma is one of the highest. I think, I don't want to misquote it here, but I think that's right. I think that every year up to the age of 12, there is no increase in trauma. But ages before they're born to age 1 is way higher than all of it. It's the only age group. So there's things that can happen while you're in the womb, or before you even realize it, the trauma-wise, that will affect you more than any other age of your life. And so it's important that we handle those things correctly. And so, we can look at it as a bad thing, but we can also look at it as, if you do the work, and if you put in the effort, and if you guide your family the right way, man, they would have to try real hard to mess it up.
Yeah.
Now, let me just base this, and then we can get on something else or whatever. But let me just say this. Because, all right, so in that group, we're talking about families, and I didn't even ask them. I asked them a question. I asked them, who was in your family, parents, and siblings? That's all I asked. 10 out of the 12 also told me, without asking, that the way they grew up was pretty good. 10 out of 12. Wasn't a question.
Yeah.
The question was you raised by your parents, and did you have siblings in the home? And 10 out of the 12 told me that the way they were raised was pretty good. One of the 10 wasn't lying.
Yeah.
The other 9 was lying.
Yeah.
And so I didn't call them out on it, but I already knew.
Sure.
And then I waited till question number 2. And how was anger expressed in the house?
Yeah.
And we realized they were lying.
Yeah.
You know, they were trying to cover it up. They were trying to make it feel better, you know, whatever. So when I say that if you raise your family correctly, I'm not talking about that you take them to church. I'm not talking about that you're a Christian. I'm talking about raising them correctly, to have a real relationship with Jesus Christ, to know who they are in Christ, to know that they have an intimate relationship with God, and to know Him, and to know who they are. So if you do that, I'm not talking about, oh, my life was pretty good, why did I end up like this? I'm talking about doing it the way Andrew Scull's doing it, doing the way Clay Russell's doing it, doing the way so many other Christian families are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
Yeah, the other thing is like, you know, when you said, well, they were lying about that, you know, some of them probably were trying to kind of cover up some of it. But the other thing is if your baseline for good is so watered down,
Mm-hmm.
you just don't know any better. Mm-hmm. It does seem like it was good, but it's because you've never experienced good. Mm-hmm. And so the best version of good you got is the one you grew up with. And that feels good enough to you. But if I would have raised you, you'd have liked life a whole lot more.
Yep.
You know, and I don't mean that to, you know, it's just the reality. Yeah. You know, my children feel an abundance of love in our home, and they get it from all angles, and they appreciate that. And I am aware that not everybody gets to experience that. I would say the majority of people nowadays don't get to experience that. Right. And so I want, and that's what you're saying, where identity is strong, peer pressure is weak. The baseline for how a man acts is set by me. What man are my children around more than anyone else? Me. Yep. And so I'm going to be the baseline. And if people don't act with the love and respect that I treat my children with, they're going to be repulsed by that. Mm-hmm. They're not going to understand it. They're not going to like it. And they probably won't classify you as a man.
Because it's not consistent.
That's right. It's not. My dad was a man, and this is how he acted, and you are not acting that way. My wife is the woman my children are around the most. She is the baseline for how a woman should act. And so when people act outside of that, it throws them off. Yeah. They don't like, and as children, not just our 7-year-old who you've seen is very perceptive, but also the 4-year-old. Mm-hmm. The 4-year-old would be like, what's wrong with her? Why is she acting like that?
That's not what a mama does.
Yeah. And those kind of comments. Oh, yeah. And they recognize it and they see it. And so they're repulsed by those types of behaviors. And so we're setting a correct baseline so that their 90% is good. And it would be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult for them to turn away from it. Yeah. And what a great thing.
Hey, I like it, you know, and with this group, you know, this wasn't the first group. Every group that I've ever done a full anger management class it's all the same.
You've told me that
for
years.
Yeah, and yeah. I've told other people that and stuff. But, and there's, you know, I said they were lying. They were, but there's a lot of reasons why. Number one is drug addicts, you know, or people that, you know, struggle with substance abuse disorders, they don't want to blame nobody else.
Sure.
You know, they want to own it themselves. Mm-hmm. Now, alcoholics typically want to blame everybody. It's everybody else's fault. But drug addicts and people who's dealt with substance use disorders and stuff, they don't want to blame nobody else. Mm. So they're not going to tell you that it was bad till you ask specific questions. The other side of it is they've seen themselves do a lot of those same things.
Yeah.
So they can't really give credit on how bad it was so much, you know, right off the bat, because they've been in those same things.
Yeah.
You know, and so we're able to minister to them and help them. And hey, life is good, and I appreciate them being open and honest with me and with us. But I'm really happy, you know, about this talk with Ari and stuff. I'm glad that we were able to revisit that.
Yeah, I'd like to have one of your kids on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can
I'll
probably
let you pick your
that.
favorite.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. We'll know when we see which one comes on.
No,
see how I set that up? That was perfect. That was smooth.
See whose time, who has the time.
Yeah.
But I tell you what I would like to do if we do use one of my kids. I would like you to interview them and not me.
Be more than happy to.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, and soon we just have to figure out some logistics as far as the setup. But there's some guests I'd like to have on with both of us.
Yeah, I'd like to do that next week. I'd like to come up with some guests.
I think we can figure something out that way.
So you asked, what's going on? We had a presidential debacle last night.
Good play on words, man. I appreciate that.
Oh, my goodness. Was that not the worst thing that you've ever seen?
That was tough.
I mean, it was tough. You know, I'm not a guy that enjoys movies where men mess up.
Yeah.
I want to see the manly man. You know,
I'm with you.
The worst movie I ever watched was probably Dr. Dolittle, where he was hearing from the animals and nobody else could. I can't deal with that.
Yeah.
And even though I'm not a fan of our current president, I did not enjoy watching that last night.
Yeah.
It was so bad. You know, if he'd messed up a little bit, I'd probably been like, yeah, there you go. I don't like old people. That's why. You know, but because it was as bad as it was, I found myself cringing.
Yeah.
You know, it was tough. And here's what was interesting is the person that people perceive as being hard and arrogant and cocky never got out of character one time, handled everything really well, took several jabs and stuff, and didn't let it get the best of him or anything. And then the other one looked just like a mean old man. You know, he cursed several different times because his vocabulary is lacking, and he didn't know what else to do. And he just looked like President Biden looked like a angry old man that was incompetent. You know, and
This may get us canceled.
it was a bad look.
Maybe this will finally be the thing that is too far.
Hey, I'm not fixing to be like they did like my opponent and stuff. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you had President Trump and President Biden, and they were side by side. And I don't care. We already know what their policies are.
Sure.
We already know what their values are. You know, President Trump's been president for 4
They've
years.
both been in office 4 years.
Right.
Yeah.
He's been in office for 4 years, and we've been around for the next 4 years. Biden's been in office since before I was born. You know what I mean? So we already know their policies and morals and traits and all those kind of things. Basically, we just needed to see that at this point in their life, who is the most competent leader amongst the two of them that we can choose to be our president the next 4 years. That's all we're looking for. We're not concerned with, this topic and that topic. We already know where they are on it. If they say something contrary to that, we're going to think they're lying anyhow because
Sure.
they have a voting record. And Biden's got a long voting record. So we know what those things are. So that's not what anybody was watching for. Everybody was watching to see who at this stage of their life is the leader. Who's the man? Who's got the competence? Who's got the guts to do what this country needs?
Yeah.
And it was terrible to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was. But I hope that people watched it.
Yeah.
And if you didn't watch it, hey, there's plenty of sound clips. Go back and check it out because the whole thing was a sound bite.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as politics go, I think local politics are a lot more important than national politics. I think obviously there's a lot of corruption in politics in general. There's a lot of corruption in a lot of industries in general. But the reality is that, I'm not sure how straight these big elections are, just to be honest. I just put that out there.
That's going to be what gets us canceled.
But the face of your country does matter.
It does.
The face of your country does matter. Have I been a fan of every president that we've ever had since I've been alive? No, I haven't. Is it exclusively because of political leanings? No, it isn't. Because the reality is in terms of those specific issues that everybody has major opinions on, very little ever gets done with those issues. There's been some, but very little. The things that are so divisive, it's like, I can't believe you feel this way about that. Very, very little ever happens with those things.
You got to get everybody on board.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's not like when you put a president in that, everything he believes is now the new law. That's not a reality. So I really don't get tripped up over a lot of those things. Obviously, I do have my opinion on those, but I don't think that that's a place to live or die. But the reality is that some of our presidents have been extremely competent. Some of them have not. And how competent our president is has always had a drastic impact
Yes.
on our country as a whole, on our economy as a whole. And regardless of his politics, I'm going to say in this sense, let's say that Biden and I have the exact same political view. We don't, but let's say for this that we do. I would still not be okay with him being the president because it's a bad look at the strength of our country when the man who is supposed to be presiding over the entire country can't string together sentences and whole thoughts. This was a lot of people's criticism with George W. was that there were times where he would get, trip over his own words, and he just seemed incompetent. A lot of people had a problem with that. I didn't like that either.
Right.
And I was a kid, and I didn't like that.
Right.
But this is much worse than that. This is clearly a man who, by the way, I'm praying for, genuinely. He's having some health issues, and I believe that it would be irresponsible I think it's irresponsible for the Democratic Party to even put him up. I think that they need to make a change. Throw somebody else in the ring that at least appears competent, And so that's kind of my take on the whole deal.
And here's what's difficult because my mind before it goes to put somebody else up, here's where my mind goes. It goes, okay, this is not going to work,
Yeah.
And so, what happens next? So the first thing that comes to my mind is when he's deemed not competent, and if he's still in office, then the vice president takes over. Well, I think that even most people in that party don't want that.
Sure.
In fact, I listened to a lot of that last night when I should have been sleeping, and because I'm not a news guy, I don't usually watch the news and stuff like that. Usually don't watch most local or national news, but last night I did want to just see how this played out because you and I pride ourselves on communication.
Yeah.
We love communication. We love relationships. We love those things. And last night was one of the most poorly communicated, segments that I've seen. Even the lady for CNN, who's supposed to be some reporter, I don't know her, but when she was asking one of the main questions, she even communicated it not well. I think it was the abortion deal because there was something new that had just happened. But even her communication skills wasn't good, And then even some of the people on TV that were talking about Biden, they wasn't communicating very well either. So I kind of started watching that. But so my mind goes to, okay, when he's deemed that he can't do this anymore, if it's not, the rest of this term, or if he gets elected in the next term, then you got this vice president that even the Democratic Party doesn't believe in at all.
Yeah.
They're trying to hide her as much as possible, And so then I start listening, and a lot of the, main Democratic leaders are like, we got to choose somebody else. But the way it works is President Biden would have to allow it.
Yeah.
Because if they put somebody else up now, it would mess up the rest of this year, and Harris would go in. So anyhow, they got to be strategic in how they do it. I feel like that last night was all people needed to see. Do I wish that we had more choices and those? Sure, I do.
Yeah. And here's something else to consider, and that was a Democratic news network that played that. And so what you need to understand is when they do these debates, every debate has a different set of rules. Every single one of them. This was set up in a way that was going to be most beneficial to Biden's competence.
For sure.
And he still fell on his face.
Yeah. So if y'all didn't notice last night, two things. Number one, and I like both of them, but one of them more than the other, is that when it was time for somebody to speak, the other person's mic was muted. Okay? That was done in Biden's favor so that Trump wouldn't overspeak and wouldn't talk over him because Trump's more aggressive. Okay?
Yeah.
President Trump's more aggressive. And so that was done to help Joe Biden. The other thing that was done is they stopped him twice when he had completely lost it.
Yep.
And they're the only ones running the clock.
Yep.
So nobody else sees the clock, and they stop him so that he doesn't just look worse and worse and worse than he really was. But I think they've already figured out that in both of those instances, they stopped him prematurely.
Yeah.
He did have more time. They were just trying to save him.
Yeah.
And it didn't work.
And had that debate been on a different news network where the rules were more neutral, especially if they were shoved the other way,
Right.
They would have just left him on the air live, and he would have just had to figure it out, and it would have been very bad. Yeah. And so, man,
it was bad enough.
Yeah, I've the major concern that I think a lot of people have derived from it was not so much what's coming as much as what's been going on, because this didn't just happen yesterday.
Right.
This has been something he's been dealing with
This
for a while.
wasn't a cold.
Yeah,
Like
it's something he's been dealing with for a while. Yeah. But hey, I want to ask you another question.
Let's go.
This is a question that came up yesterday, I believe, in an office conversation. With somebody who was in there speaking, sharing about some things. And it's a question that I've got a lot of opinions on, but I'm curious to see what you have to say about it. There is a common thread of thought in the world that when somebody is doing some action, maybe it's fine, maybe it's harmful, it doesn't really matter, but they're doing some action. A lot of times people take this position. They say, hey, look, if they're happy, I'm happy. As long as they're good, I'm good. And I have a whole lot of thoughts about that statement. And I'm curious, if you hear somebody say something like that, a version of, hey, if they're happy, I'm happy, what is kind of like your knee-jerk response to that statement?
Yeah, so I was actually in the office when the guy said it, and he's a great guy, third-phase guy, moving forward, and he was talking about his job and stuff, and he was talking about some people that work at this job. And he was, basically he was trying not to condemn them. He had a different opinion about what they were doing than what they do, or they wouldn't be doing it, and the motivations behind it. But he was basically, telling the story, but also trying not to condemn them by saying, but, if that is what makes them happy, then I'm fine. But he went a step further and said, and I've told them that.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, Ryan Kincaid in a little while, wasn't trying to, cause any issues. He just said, I kind of got a problem with that line of thought. He said, I'd love to see y'all talk about that on Jesus Cartel. And I was like, so we will, and I was like, man, that's a great conversation we can have. And I immediately thought where I would go in my mind. Now I don't remember what that was now, but it'll be okay. I hadn't thought about it since. But I do want to just start by saying that there's a difference between temporary happiness and joy.
Yes. Yes.
So let's just say
Major.
that just right off the bat. Way difference between what's giving you a temporary feeling of happiness and what is going to bring you joy and blessings in your life. And so most of the time when you hear this segment or you hear this statement that, whatever floats your boat, whatever makes you happy, as long as you're happy, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Well, usually what that means is either you're doing something against what I think is right or you're doing something wrong, but I'm okay with it either way. That's difficult. That's real difficult because most of the time when people say that, it's because you're doing something that may give you temporary happiness, but it's not going to bring you peace, love, and joy, and it's not going to bring you closer to God. So, y'all already know how we feel about that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't call yourself a friend.
Yeah.
If you're the one that just says, well, as long as it makes you happy, I'm okay with it, you are not friends anymore.
Yeah.
And don't call yourself a friend. You are an acquaintance that really doesn't care about their future at all.
I'm surprised to hear that from you. I figured you'd say they're still your best friend.
Oh my goodness.
No, man.
You knew it was coming.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. 100%. Here's the deal. Here's what you're really saying, right? I look a lot at what you're actually saying, not what you said, but what you're actually saying, and that's something that I always try to derive from and bring out in my conversations. And so when you say, if they're happy, I'm happy, or if you're happy, I'm happy, what you're really saying is, whatever doesn't inconvenience me, I'm good with.
Yeah.
So long as this doesn't cause me any sort of inconvenience, uncomfortable situations, keep me out of awkwardness and tension.
Awkward conversations.
Whatever doesn't make me do that, hey, brother, I'm good. Yeah. If you can do what you do and I can do what I do and we can maintain a peaceful, I don't even want to say relationship because I don't feel like you have one anymore, just a peaceful situation, hey, brother. Yeah. Sign me up for that. Yeah. And that, man, how terrible. That's the reason people always, they look back. You and I had a conversation about the generations one day. And I think, to me, this is one of the biggest issues, is that used to, this was far less common. People having the, if they're happy, I'm happy mindset. Used to, when people weren't doing things right, there was accountability. Amen. Because there was real relationships. And people didn't stand for stuff like that. Like, by George, this ain't right. We're not doing it, and I'm still that way. Right. And we had a podcast not too long ago where I posed the question kind of the beginning, like, am I going too far trying to hold people to this insane standard? And by the end of the podcast, I was like, nope, I'm not. Nope. And I really entered the podcast neutral, right. Trying to figure out. But by the end of it, I was convinced that we have to hold each other to this standard, because the danger of not doing it. The danger of not doing it is so great. And you don't be selfish. This isn't just about you. And in your mind, when you say, if they're good, I'm good, that's only about you. You're not worried about them. You're not worried about the kids they go home to, the spouse they go home to. They're a son or a daughter to some parents. You're not worried about those relationships. You're not worried about whether or not they keep their job. You're not worried about whether or not they go to jail, whether or not they end up in rehab, whether or not they die from the things that they're doing. You don't care at all, so long as you're not inconvenienced. Right. And it's like, I understand self-preservation. I get it. I've lived my life in a state of self-preservation. It ran me straight into the ground. It was the worst section of my life I can point back to. And I don't suggest that for anybody. I do understand it because I've lived it. But I don't agree with it. Just because I understand it doesn't mean I agree with it. And so being in that place and not wanting to have this conversation because, hey, look, brother, I could lose my job. It's worth losing your job over. Yeah. It's worth losing your job over to stand up for what's right. Well, hey, man, look, they may never talk to me again. It's worth them not talking to if it challenges that thought process and maybe plants a seed that could be nurtured and harvested later. It's worth it. It's worth it. And the question isn't whether or not you're really happy or they're really happy. The question is, do you actually care enough about them to do anything about it?
That's it. So I'm so happy to get this award, and I would like to thank God, and I just thank God that we're going to have world peace.
No.
We're not going to have world peace.
Negative.
And we're sure not going to have it by co-signing for everybody and just letting everybody do whatever the heck they want to do. That's not what's in the cards, and that's not what's going to happen.
Can't we all just get along?
Can't we all just get along? And it's the same way in our relationships. So while you were talking about, as long as it's convenient and it doesn't hurt you and stuff, I was just thinking, a scenario to where you see somebody and they're raising their son in the wrong way.
Sure.
They're not disciplining their son. They're not doing what, those kind of things. And you think, well, I need to say something to them because we're friends and I know a better way, And I really feel like they'll receive it from me, and they may not receive it from anybody else.
Yep.
But what about if they don't? And then you start thinking, well, why would I tell them? Okay. We don't have a son the same age. So my son's not going to be going over there playing anyhow.
Yeah.
We're not teaching children's church anymore because we've moved up to the youth, so we don't really have to deal with their son. and you start making excuses because it's really, and then at the end of it, it's like what you said, well, it's really not hurting me
Yep.
for them to raise their son in this way. And that's the mindset where it goes to, if it's going to hurt you or bother you. Oh, people put something on Facebook just because they got to slow down in a town or they got to do this or, whatever it is, something really, really minor because they see it as it directly affects them.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are, your best friend needing a word of God through you, and if it doesn't inconvenience you, you're not going to say anything because you don't want to have the hard conversations.
Yeah.
I had a hard conversation with one of my best friends last night. We had it together. I mean, have to say things, and understand. And I'm better because of it, and he's better because of it. And, man, that's just part of accountability. That's just part of putting ourselves out there. It's part of what we do. But it's not just us. That's the way all relationships should be.
One of my favorite jokes that I like to do, and I do it pretty often just because I enjoy the reaction so much, is when I have friends that are moving, I'll always go to the husband or whoever the man is in the situation. I'll go to him and say, "Hey, look, man, do you need help? You need help moving?" And they go, "Man, that'd actually be great." And I go, "Whoa. So look, man, I was really anticipating on you saying no. You got it under control. And so I was going to look like a good friend for offering, but you were going to decline. And so
you kind of messed us all up.
So we're going to do this again, right? I'm going to ask again, but this time you're going to say, no, man, I think we got." And so that's just something I've always done, and I found humorous for that reason. But the reason that it's humorous is because it's the same mindset.
Yeah.
That's not a friend at all. Like a friend wouldn't do that. And that's what makes it funny to me. But this is the literal mindset. It's like, hey, look, man, I'm here for you. I want to help you. And then the opportunity you have to actually be a friend and be helpful, you're like, ooh.
I do that almost every time where I ask somebody how their day's going or how you doing, and if they say anything other than good, I was like, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
I really don't have enough time to hear all that. and I'm just laughing, messing with them.
Yeah.
But it's because we see it every day.
Yeah.
Don't nobody really care how everybody's doing.
No, not usually.
Yeah. And not everybody wants to help you move either.
Yeah. That's why I like Louisiana, where when you say, hey, how are you? The other person usually just says, how are you? Nobody ever actually says how they're doing. You just
like,
both
up,
ask
man?
a question.
Yeah, it's like, what's up, man? What's up?
Yeah.
See ya. Done. Yeah.
So dumb into what? Big gulps,
hit
huh?
My whole finger.
Well, see you later. Yeah, no, I love that. But no, it's a terrible thing, and it's trickled into a lot of mindsets and a lot of different scenarios. And I mentioned one to you on the way over here because I just realized that we were doing this question on the right before we drove over, and so the same mindset comes from and I'm totally prepared for whatever rock is about to be thrown at me. The same mindset is in the happy wife, happy life statement. What that means is, don't worry about having a good relationship. Don't worry about mastering the communication skill between you and your spouse. Don't bother putting in any of the hard work. Don't bother standing on values that you feel like you have. Neither of you. Right? Just fold your hand. Let her do what she wants to do. And you'll be fine, right? Yes. And there are so many men who have bought that lie because they so badly just want peace in the home. I want to come home from work. I want to sit on the couch. I want to turn on the television, and I'd like to not be bothered. And so long as I buy her the stuff she wants and run the house the way she wants and discipline the kids the way that she feels comfortable with and do all that, then I can have those few hours of peace in the home, and that's going to be good. And here's what you have, really. Here's what you don't have. You don't have a marriage. You got a roommate. Yeah. That's not what you want. Marriage is a beautiful thing, and it's an awesome thing when it's done correctly. And it produces children like the one that you got to see the other day. That's what marriage produces. Mm-hmm. Roommates don't produce that.
That's right.
It just doesn't. Did my wife and I have to work really hard at our communication to get to where we are today.
Sure.
You bet we did. Why? Because what we were talking about earlier, we were raised very different.
Yeah.
We were raised very different. Neither was bad, just different. She came from an extremely emotional, affectionate home. I came from a totally non-affectionate, non-emotional, this is the way things are home. And so we both grew up in a good situation, or, I say good, I'm lying a little bit.
Twice.
Yeah. But it was a situation where I wasn't in any danger.
Right.
And so for a lot of people, that's good enough. That's good enough. And so I had to learn that it's okay for kids to have feelings. Yeah. It's okay for them to
cry,
be happy and be sad sometimes. And it's like that was tough for me, because that was just not, and it wasn't a negative in my home. I didn't grow up resenting my family. That was just not what we did. We just weren't sad. You just weren't. And then on her end, she had to pull away from the emotions of everything and realize that just because a kid's sad doesn't mean that they're right. It could be that the kid's sad because the kid did something wrong, and it's the kid's fault that this happened, and they need to bear the responsibility of what they did. And so it took a lot of communication. I mean, heck, we're still growing in it. But it takes a lot of communication to be able to bridge those gaps and have a real marriage and a real relationship. That's why it was difficult. For the times that it was difficult, was because we're trying to get somewhere. We're not trying to just have peace in the home. We're trying to get somewhere. And to get somewhere down the road, you got to walk. You don't get anywhere by standing. But that peace in the home, that's a standing still. That's saying we're not looking to get any better. We're not looking to improve our marriage. Really not even looking to be married, if I'm honest. Just looking to be left alone. Right? That's not a marriage.
Yeah, and we see that all the time, like just a few things. Number one, you said, having the correct Christian marriage produces, the arias that we saw, last week, and then being the roommates doesn't. Well, what it does produce is fatherless children. What it does produce is poverty. When you're just roommates with somebody and you're just living with somebody, then when they don't act the way you want them to act, or if your version of what you want changes, then you just go get another one.
Yeah.
And then what's left behind is the children that, may see their dad, may see their mom, may not, this the kind of stuff. But those kids, oh my goodness, I think we're trying to get canceled from everybody.
I like it. Let's do it.
Those kids will never be Aria Skull. I'm not saying that those kids with roommate parents can't give their life to Christ later on and become great adults. They got a 10% chance or less. But what I am saying is they'll never be that at 7 years old.
Yeah.
Because they weren't trained that way. And so this whole happy wife, happy life stuff garbage is really difficult.
Yeah.
Because what if even though your wife doesn't know it, what she really needs is a strong man in her life. But she doesn't know how to communicate that to you.
Yeah.
So you feel like that she doesn't.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Aria said last week. I know we keep going back to that, but it was a great episode. She said, I wish that I didn't get spankings, but I know why I do, and because of that, I'm glad for it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the same way. You got a woman that really likes to get her way superficially, but deep down, she longs for a strong man to lead her family.
Yeah.
But because her man isn't strong, then she'd rather him just be submissive.
Yeah.
But what she really wants is a strong man.
Yeah.
To lead in Christian values. But because she doesn't have a strong Christian value man, all she really wants is a submissive roommate. And as long as you're that, then you can have some peace and she'll keep you around for a while.
Yeah.
But when her, focus changes, or ideas change, or mood changes, or hormones change, or whatever, then she'll throw you out and get another roommate.
Yeah.
Because that's all you are. And so that's a difficult situation.
Yeah. That was the response that Aria had. I said, well, do you think I should stop?
Yeah.
And she said, well, if that would be being a good dad, but it wouldn't. You know, and Courtney and I have had that exact conversation, the exact one that you just said. She has said verbatim. She has said, you know, I'm so glad that you never folded your hand. I'm glad that you didn't fold your hand, because it seems like this is what you want. She said, but if you would have folded, I would have lost all respect for you. And, you know, there's a reason in Scripture it says, husbands, love your wives, wives, respect your husbands.
All right,
and if
so
she would have lost that respect,
that's right.
There's no marriage.
Because of that. So let's take it full circle. And let's take it back. And let's take it back to that friend that you're saying, well, as long as they're happy, I'm happy. If that friend knows that what they're doing is contrary to your morals and beliefs, but yet your response is, look, man, whatever makes you happy, I'm happy. They just lost all respect for you too.
That's right. It's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate that shows what you believe. So if I say, hey, look, I think people who wear black T-shirts are just the biggest pieces of trash of all time, and I'm wearing a black T-shirt, it's like, well, it don't matter what he says. You know, if I say people who wear, I don't know what color that is. Is that gray?
Yeah, it's green.
What?
Green.
Green? Wow. Okay. Praise God. People who wear green T-shirts are a piece of trash. I won't even hang out with them, but I sit here and I have a conversation with you while you got your green shirt on. It's not what I say. It's what I tolerate. It shows what I believe. And so if you have the mindset, if they're happy, I'm happy, what you're really saying is I don't believe what I'm telling you I believe.
Amen.
Or I wouldn't put up with it.
And they know it.
Yeah.
You know, so
100%.
they know that you're not holding them to any standard based on what you believe. And because of that, they know that you don't have a real friendship.
That's right.
I mean, they understand that. You don't. You're thinking that you are being a friend to them by saying that, you know. But they know that you're not. You know, I think that if we called things out more, we would have a lot more respect than if we don't.
Yeah.
You know, do we need to do it in love? Everything needs to be in love. Do we need to do it with some tact? Man, that would be the best option, you know. But at the end of the day, it hasn't changed. It is what it is. It's either biblical or it's not.
Yeah.
You know, we want to do it in love as much as possible. We want to use as much communication skills as possible. But at the end of the day, the word is the word.
Yeah.
And it is what it is.
That's right. That's right. Well, hey, look, if you find yourself in one of these roommate agreements, it's not too late to turn that around. It's going to take some hard conversation. It's going to take some putting your foot down. By the way, this doesn't just happen with men. It happens the other way, too. I know we use the happy wife, happy life, but the opposite is equally dangerous.
Yes.
Happy husband, happy life is just as bad.
Yes.
Just as bad. Just because you are the leader of the household doesn't mean that everything you think is automatically correct and you should do it your way. You've got to learn to speak to your spouse, learn, communicate together, and arrive at conclusions together. And yes, ultimately, that final say does belong with you as the husband, but not without consideration of the rest of the family. It's so important. It's so valuable. But if you find yourself in that, like I said, it's not too late to turn it around, because here's what I see more than anything else is children who grow up in fatherless homes with a father in the home.
Yeah, that's difficult.
Yeah.
And it'd be difficult to grow up in a motherless home with a mother in the home too, and so their whole identity is suppressed
Yep.
by the other one, and that's difficult.
They're yearning for you, man. They're yearning for you. You got anything else?
No, man, we love y'all. Hey, so think about somebody that needs to hear this episode. We talked about a lot of stuff. So think about somebody that needs to see this episode, and you can share it with them on Facebook or whatever, but you can also hit that share button and hit more and send it straight to their phone and send them a text message or send them a link or something. And don't just hold Jesus Cartel for yourself. Share it with somebody.
Yep. Praise God. Love you guys.
Love y'all.